What are advance directives? What is a living will? Are there different types? These are issues you need to think about now because it's not uncommon for people to feel forced into important, life-altering decisions. Brian Johnston is the Western Director of the National Right to Life Committee. He has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives, as California Commissioner on Aging, as Chairman of the California Pro-Life Council, on the board of the National Legal Center for the Medically Dependent and Disabled. And now here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're your program on the right to life, on what it really is. You know, if you're just listening for the first time or came across this on the radio dial and you find out, oh, well, this is a right to life program, you might think, oh, it's about babies and pregnancy and this whole abortion debate. I already know where I stand on this. And you might already have made a decision. But I promise you, whatever side you have come down in your mind, you do not yet fully understand what the right to life is. If you think that this debate is about pregnancy and moms and a woman's right to choose, you do not understand what's happening to your society right now, and perhaps most importantly, the fact that medical killing was legalized in 1973. And medical killing has rapidly expanded throughout your culture. And the use of the physician as an enforcer and as a killer has become licit, legal, and is regularly practiced in your country, and now in Western Civ. Well, today we're going to talk about an important issue. I've mentioned it before, and again, if this is your first time listening to Life Matters, we talk about what the right to life is, but it's a lot bigger, as I said, than the media portrays it. The right to life is a very specific policy principle that America's founders found in natural law, the laws of nature, and of nature's God. And those principles, if you understand that those are the principles not only for our form of government, but for all successful and ethical governments, that these principles are vital for your freedom, for how you understand how to relate to other people. The principles of natural law basically point out that human beings are unique. And throughout Western civilization, this principle that human beings understand more, have a spiritual quality, that they are more than simply smart animals. Human beings have a transcendent ability, what some call a spiritual nature, but human beings should not be treated like animals, herded or killed at the will or disposition of someone with more power. That's known as the law of the jungle. That's known as the law of natural selection. It is the opposite of natural law. Natural law says that if you perceive an injustice, that means that you're perceiving there's a higher law, that a country's laws can only be considered just if they are following this higher law, that there's higher principles. And you know, I know many people of very different political philosophies, and all of them use that term about unjust laws and injustice. That's an acknowledgement that you're more than an animal and that human beings are not merely animals. Once you understand that, you're going to have an easier time understanding the right to life. You're also going to understand the debates of our society right now. So today we're going to spend time on an issue we've touched on before, but it's rapidly expanding. As I've said, medical killing is now legal starting in January of 73, and that concept of medical killing has now spread. All of the states on the west coast of the U.S. have legalized assisted suicide. You may think you know what it is, but I am actually afraid that you may not fully understand it. You may not know that it's being expanded on. And that's precisely what's happening. And yet, people are not aware of it. We're going to spend time with a good friend of mine, Alex Schadenburg, of the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. He's out of Canada, and Canada is going well over the cliff now on this issue of assisted suicide and euthanasia. Assisted suicide is essentially a form of voluntary euthanasia. But basically, it embraces the idea that a third party can be involved in killing people. Oh, if you got a good reason, I mean, you can come up with a good reason. Let's kill them. And this is very, very dangerous. We're going to be talking about that. We'll be joined by Alex in a moment. And then I'm going to wrap up by talking about California again. For our California listeners, again, we're heard throughout California. There's a bill now in your California legislature, and as you know, your California legislature doesn't necessarily follow natural law. They cook up new principles that they think are better. And that's what they're busy doing right now. And the California Capitol is considering now a law, SB 380, that deals with end of life. And as you know, assisted suicide is already legal, but this expands on it. And you need to contact your state legislators about SB 380. So we'll talk more about that after our visit with Alex Schadenburg.
Life Matters continues after this.
You know about our car donation program at California Pro-Life. We use one of the most respected programs in the nation. Go to the California Pro-Life page, californiaprolife.org. Scroll to the bottom and click on Donate My Car. It's that easy. Did you know you can also donate any vehicle, boat, motorhome, or even personal property? If you are nearing retirement age, you can also get a tax deduction by earmarking a portion of your upcoming compulsory distributions from your 401k. Just email us for information. California Pro-Life is fighting to equip California pro-lifers with understanding and the tools to again protect the unborn and other vulnerable innocents. Thank you for your help in this battle. Go to californiaprolife.org. That's californiaprolife.org for more information.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters, your program on the right to life, on the culture, and the very real battle of ideas. And if you don't think there's a battle going on, you're in trouble. I have back Alex Schadenburg, a very good friend, leader of the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. We're going to talk about what's been happening in Canada. And there's been a lot happening. Down here, Alex, many pro-lifers, and I'm writing a book about this because I find it alarming. Obviously, with Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton, the United States legalized human abortion. But what many pro-lifers don't realize is the deeper issue that's much more, if there's anything that could be more frightening, it legalized medical killing, that there's a class of human being that can be disposed of, and according to Doe versus Bolton, disposed of solely on the basis of the doctor's opinion. Yep. And that's what happened on January 22nd, 1973. And so many pro-lifers are alarmed by that, but they're alarmed by the fact that it's babies that are dying, and that's terrible. And we all agree, but they aren't recognizing the sweeping implications of legalized medical killing. And up there in Canada, and again, we'll talk about Euthanasia Prevention Coalition, what a great job you've been doing in helping educate people, not just in Canada, but around the world, to understand that Western civilization's core values have been set aside, and many don't see it. So they have to understand Canada is facing some incredible things. Tell us some of the challenges now that the nation of Canada is facing.
So right now, Canada is in the middle of expanding its euthanasia law. And what makes this very disturbing is the fact that not only is it disturbing that we have euthanasia, it's legal, but we legalized it in June of 2016. And they decided then last year to expand the law already. What is ridiculous about this whole situation is they haven't even bothered to examine the experience with the law. They haven't done anything like that. They have decided they're going to expand the law. And this is all related to actually a Quebec court decision. There was a Quebec court decision which was not appealed. So when something's not appealed, that means it's allowed to be. And the Quebec court decision struck down the requirement in Canada's euthanasia law that someone had to be terminally ill. So they decided that if someone had a disability or a chronic condition, that in fact the law was discriminating against them because they couldn't have death by lethal injection. They had to only be if they weren't terminally ill. But this court decision was not appealed. The government used this as an opportunity now to go much further, though, because the amendments to law that they're bringing in was not limited to the court decision whatsoever. So what the law is saying is that what we're going to do is we're also going to get rid of the waiting period in the law. So that's what they're doing. They're trying to get rid of the 10-day waiting period. We're also going to create this 2-track law. So if you're terminally ill, there'd be no waiting period. But if you're not terminally ill, we'll give you a 90-day waiting period. So what it means is if someone with a disability who has a chronic condition would like to die by lethal injection, they would have to wait 90 days. But the problem with that is that will also get struck down by a future court decision, because what they've done is they've created what they call an inequality within the law. And in Canada, if you have an inequality within a law, that gets struck down based on it being unequal. Unequal access is a reason for the courts to strike something down. So in fact, they've created a law with the intention of it being wide open as soon as the court gets to it. But then they went off and they said, oh, well, we're not going to allow euthanasia for mental illness. So the law says you're not allowed to have euthanasia for mental illness alone. But in fact, it's time again where the government is lying to us, because the law actually allows euthanasia for mental illness. What the law says is that it allows euthanasia for physical or psychological suffering. It does not define psychological suffering, but it says so long as that psychological suffering is intolerable to the person and cannot be relieved in a way that that person considers acceptable. So it's totally based on how the person feels. Therefore, the person could have euthanasia then. So that would mean mental illness, psychological suffering. Mental illness is a form of psychological suffering, and you can't really separate the two. Psychological suffering might be seen as depression, might be seen as many things, but it's also would be seen as someone having certain types of mental illness. So the law is full of basic lies. And then we go the step further. Physicians in Canada are having serious problems because in some provinces, now of course, now I'm getting into the provincial matters, some provinces, physicians are being forced to participate in euthanasia. So what that means is a physician who's opposed to killing is being told, oh, you don't actually have to do the killing, but you have to send your patient to the killer. So they're required to participate in the act by a direct referral for the purpose of killing. And so physicians who are opposed to killing are saying, I'm not going to do that. So we've had a whole bunch of physicians who I know personally who have left and gone to the US because they're saying, I'm being pressured. I'm being told by the College of Physicians that I'll lose my medical license if I'm not going to kill. I had a conversation with one of Canada's leading palliative care physicians just a few days ago, and she's being pressured to do euthanasia, to refer for euthanasia, and she's refusing. And they're telling her, well, then you're going to lose your job. Let's think this through. This isn't just one of Canada's, caring palliative care physicians. This is one of Canada's leading palliative care physicians. This is someone who is considered one of the key experts worldwide who's being told you will lose your job because you're unwilling to kill. And then we get to the Delta Hospice Society. The Delta Hospice Society is a hospice organization in the Delta region of British Columbia who have refused to kill. They refuse to kill their patients. They have said, we will not do euthanasia. We will not offer euthanasia. If somebody wants euthanasia, we recognize that the law allows them to have it. So we will arrange for the transfer of care, because obviously we can't tell somebody what to do, but we're not going to do it ourselves. We're not going to do the act. We're not going to allow the act to be done on our premises. And the British Columbia government told them, if you're not going to do euthanasia, and if you're not going to offer euthanasia, if you're not going to allow it to be on your premises, then we're going to defund you. Now, to make it even worse, the British Columbia government has also said that they're going to expropriate the 10-bed hospice from them. So this is a hospice that the Delta Hospice Society, which is an independent organization, it's a charity. They built this building about 10 years ago. It cost them $900,000 of fundraised dollars, not government money, to build a building with 10 rooms for hospice care, and they're being told by the government, we're going to expropriate your hospice from you because you won't kill. This is the kind of thing we're going through right now in Canada, and it's getting to be, beyond ridiculous, but the fact of it is the beginning point is that they allow killing to occur. Once you say it's okay for somebody, such as a physician or a nurse, to be able to kill somebody, now the only thing we're negotiating is under what rules and for whom you're going to kill. So really what's going on right now in Canada is the political battle over what are the rules that we're going to follow to do this act of killing. And for those who don't want to do it, how are we going to treat them? And this is what's being debated right now, because the killing issue already passed us. The whole question of euthanasia itself means you're allowing someone to kill you.
Right. And I think it's important. We have some new listeners, I'm sure, and important to go over some basic premises that are intentionally being confused in the media. And I think the very first one is, what is hospice? And hospice is a very important and, in principle, a very good thing. Hospice is a situation where if you have a terminal illness and it really is incurable, that happens. We know that.
Yeah,
But what
absolutely.
hospice does is it offers you all the medical care and treatment, and especially the emotional comfort care and the familial comfort care. I know I've written about this, and I know that Alex is well familiar with this phenomenon, but often it's the family members that can't handle a terminal illness in someone else in their family, particularly if it's a breadwinner. And there's incredible emotion. And those emotions can put a lot of pressure on that ill person. So good hospice intervenes not just by dealing with the pain. And again, a very common idea is, oh, if you have a terminal illness, you're going to be in incredible pain. That's actually not the case. But when there is incredible pain, the resources to deal with the pain are available. And that's what proper palliative care has dealt with. You can deal with the pain and do it in a way now with modern pain management. You don't have to put someone into a stupor. And yet there's a lot of misunderstanding about that.
That's right. The Delta Hospice Society in this case is a little bit different, is they've actually stood up and made it clear that they're not willing to kill. A lot of the hospices in Canada have been saying that they're not willing to kill, but they're being very silent about it because they don't want to be, how would you say, under pressure from the government.
Yeah.
But the government itself has decided that this Delta Hospice Society will make an example of them. And by doing that, all the other hospice organizations, they're going to fold under pressure as soon as we tell them, oh, are you killing yet? And of course, they will say, well, yeah, well, and they will be feeling pressure to be involved in it. You see, what made the Delta Hospice Society such a pariah is it wasn't willing to kill.
Mm-hmm.
That's what made it the pariah, not that it was killing, that it wasn't willing to kill.
Right. And they were following the traditional rule of hospice and the Hippocratic Oath.
Absolutely,
that you
yes.
care for and comfort, but you never kill a patient. Once you, and this is what Alex is dealing with, folks, in Canada, and what the nation of Canada is dealing with. Once you say it's okay to kill a patient, then where do you stop? How sick does someone have to be? And this is very common. People think, oh, well, if they have 6 months left, we think, oh, but then someone else says, yeah, but this guy, he has 6 years as a paraplegic. He's condemned to suffer for 6 years. That's even worse. If he wants to be dead, then by all means. And of course, in depression, it's not uncommon. In fact, we used to have suicide hotlines to prevent encouraging suicide. Unfortunately, once you legalize physician-assisted suicide or any form of euthanasia, certain doctors are perfectly fine with suicide. They'll actually do it to you.
Right.
And so there's an inversion of the Hippocratic Oath, an inversion of medicine. And once the doors are thrown open, it's impossible to stop. And so it's important that you, right now, wherever you're listening, because I know that this is heard in Belgium on European Gospel Radio, you can still lift your voice. In Belgium, in the Netherlands, this is happening, and people with nothing wrong with them physically are being euthanized. People who are merely depressed are killed. And we have to lift our voices. What you need to do, I recommend, and Alex, I'd love your comments here, but speak to your own physician. Get the information at the EPC, Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. There's some great articles. What's the website there?
Well, it's epcc.ca, but if you Google Euthanasia Prevention Coalition, it comes right up. They also, if you want excellent articles, you need to go to the blog. So when you go to the website, you'll see on the left-hand side a picture of me, and it doesn't look too bad, but nonetheless, once you click on the picture, it takes you straight to the blog. Now, the blog is where we have all these articles, these news articles, to keep you up to date as to exactly what is happening. And the problem is that a lot of states that have legalized assisted suicide, for instance, in the U.S., they're also now pushing for the expansion of their laws. This is the big push right now by the assisted suicide lobby in the U.S. also.
That's right. And I want to remind folks, if you haven't heard of this before, if you've tuned in for the first time, realize that physician-assisted suicide doesn't give you, the patient, anything. There's no rights given to you just to be dead. It empowers the doctor entirely. Again, let me point out, if you go to your doctor and say, doctor, I think this is incurable, I just want to be dead, They can say, well, I'm not ready for that. I think maybe you should try this treatment. We haven't tried this treatment. Or I think you may be depressed. I'm going to give you a prescription for this medication to kind of give you a better view of things. Or I'm going to refer you to a psychologist. And they get to decide. If, however, they decide, I think you should be dead, they're free now to counsel you to do that. And they are the decision maker. They decide when you die. And so what physician-assisted suicide actually does is it empowers the assistant, whether it's the physician or some other third party, to be involved in intentional killing. The only freedom given to the patient isn't freedom. It's just be dead. And the real needs, and very often, if you've ever been seriously ill, it is easy to be depressed. If you've been in nursing homes, you know that they're depressing environments. And once it's legal to indulge this form of depression, Katie, bar the door, because it's very easy to talk someone into the easy way out. It'll be painless. It'll be quick. It's critically important.
We'll be right back after this.
You're listening to Life Matters.
You're pretty amazing. The reason I can say that is America's founders said that about you. That's right. They said that every human being is created by a creator and given rights by that creator. Those rights are not given by the government. It's the government's job to protect those rights. And the very first and most important is the right to be alive, the right to life. If you want to be involved in the national effort, go to nrlc.org.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Okay, I'm back with Alex Schadenburg, leader of the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition, based in Canada. Alex, I actually have had this conversation with every one of my physicians, and it always throws them off, but you need to be ready. Here in California, my physician, I asked him about this. He said, well, I would never do that. I said, oh, well, that's good. But would you refer for it? Well, there's some people, they're comfortable with it. No, but my concern is for your profession. In other words, you're willing for your profession to use your knowledge to kill people, and you're silent about it. To me, that's like a policeman who knows that there's bad policemen that use their gun and their badges to go and shake down business owners, that literally do a shakedown using their police powers. And a good cop that says, well, I would never do that. I know there's other guys that do it, but I would never do that. No, if you're a good cop, you're going to make sure no cop does that. And that's what the Hippocratic Oath was about. Physicians knew that once killing becomes a standard procedure, an accepted procedure in medicine, it will become rampant. And in the most vulnerable people, if you've got lots of money, if you're well connected to the hospital system, yeah, you can resist. But it's the people who are in the most need who are simply going to be cost effective and eliminated. And once you recognize that, and in every culture this has happened, that's what happens. That's what happened in Germany in the 30s. It started dealing first with those who were mentally ill, those who were World War I victims, by the way. That's where they started in the 1930s, is the mustard gas from World War I. They had tens of thousands of German World War I vets that were hospitalized. It was incurable. They were, quote, suffering. And this was a way to end their suffering. So they didn't start with the Jews. They started with their own Aryan people. And it was a way of easing pain and saving money. And once it begins, there's no way to stop it. So the way we have to stop it is through education and by holding to account the conscience of those who say they are good physicians, reminding them of their duty to their profession. So there's so much at stake. There's so much at stake now that medicine has lost its moorings. It means that Western civilization has lost those very moorings. And it's up to us as inheritors of Western Civ to not be silent. It's up to us to remind others that this is what has allowed us to have the freedoms and the blessings we have, and to only enjoy those freedoms and only indulge ourselves and not recognize the very premise on which it's been given us is worse than foolish. It's hideous, and we're seeing the implications of that. Anything else there that we can look at
Alex, in terms of EPCC? Again, give us the website address.
It's www.epcc.ca. And as I say, it's easy to find by just Googling Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. But I also wanted to say to Americans that a lot of people in the U.S. are not aware of the pressure now by the assisted suicide lobby to promote and expand assisted suicide in the U.S. And they're discussing changing these laws to be euthanasia, meaning that they believe that there's problems with assisting a suicide, but euthanasia solves those problems. And let me give you a very quick comment on that. For instance, with assisted suicide, there are a lot of actually very bad deaths. And the reason is that these drugs you take, they say this is all about death with dignity, but these drugs are not designed to be drugs that would be easy to be taken by the body. The body might go into convulsions, the body might throw up. It might take many hours. There's a burning effect on the throat. People have had these, very, very bad burns in the throat as they're dying with these drugs. These drugs are very, very harsh, lethal drugs. So obviously with euthanasia, it works sort of easier because someone else is injecting you with an amount of drug that will kill you. So the fact of it is this a big pressure now to even move to the euthanasia. But remember, euthanasia is homicide. Mm-hmm. Canadians even get a bit uncomfortable with it, but the fact is that when we legalized euthanasia in Canada, we created an amendment to our Homicide Act. That's how we did it. Mm-hmm. It says in our Homicide Act that you're not allowed to kill someone, and then there's an exception to homicide, and that's the euthanasia law. So in fact, the law recognizes it's homicide, it's murder. There's no question about that. This is what you're allowing. You're allowing killing, but it's murder. And it's even defined that way when it's legal as still murder, but an exception to it. So the fact is that once you allow killing and murder to be legal, you're saying there's a certain class of people, physicians or nurses or nurse practitioners or whoever, who can now do this. Now you've given, first of all, the power over your life to someone, but you've also created a precedent that life can be ended. And you can't go back on that.
Yep. It's very, very good to talk to you again, Alex, and we thank you for your work up there and what you're doing, and we appreciate having you in the fight.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Okay, well, I told you that we have a California urgency issue. The expansion of assisted suicide law is now on you if you live in California. And Senate Bill 380 by Senator Eggman would actually require now that any physician, if there's a request, they cannot deny that request. And if they think that person is depressed or perhaps there's a better form of treatment, too bad. They will be required by law to refer that person immediately to a killing doctor. It's interesting, when you read the bill, it'll be considered coercion if you don't kill them. And that doctor will be subject to civil and criminal penalties. This is serious. There's been a dramatic change in the medical profession. I'm stunned at the number of people who do not recognize it. They're not ready for it. And in this battle of ideas, if you're not understanding these ideas, you've already lost.
Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life.